In the sort of tone of a man who is accustomed to having his orders carried out, John Mearsheimer is instructing the British High Court to release Julian Assange. This has given me a bit of a problem. I'm Graniopteryx. Okay, so I'm playing a video here. The link will be below. The closed captions are on, but I'm not going to play what he says. You can find that out yourself if you follow the link. Professor John Mearsheimer points out that Assange is not a traitor. Even Chelsea Manning, who revealed secret information entrusted to him and which he was duty bound, considering his position, not to reveal. He was convicted of violations of the July 2013 Espionage Act. But Assange isn't even guilty of that, for sure. He published secret information, but it was information passed on to him by someone else, to wit, Chelsea Manning. The man isn't even an American citizen, and he certainly hadn't agreed to any sort of secrecy contract, which I assume Manning must have signed somewhere along the line. So, quite correctly, Mearsheimer reminds us that a journalist who exposes government dirty tricks and corruption is to be respected and certainly not prosecuted. Professor Mearsheimer then goes on to remind us that governments make foolish decisions, and it's the job of journalists to expose those mistakes, which protects us from the same mistakes being made again. I'm with Mearsheimer on that one 100%. Although I do wish that his trenchant defence of free speech and good journalism might extend to what's going on right now in Russia, a subject upon which the good professor has remained so quiet you might think that in his universe Russia simply doesn't exist. Professor Mearsheimer then explains that no one was hurt by Assange's revelations, as well as reminding us that the poor fellow has effectively been in prison now for over 10 years. And even if there was a case to answer, any further prosecution would amount to cruel and unusual punishment. Again, I'm with Professor Mearsheimer 110% on that one. Where we part company a little is his condescending order to the British High Court to let Assange go. Okay, he may not have thought that's what he was doing, but that's how he comes across. He says that, taking into consideration all the foregoing, I respectfully ask the British High Court not to extradite Assange to the United States. And he continues, in my opinion, that would clearly be the right decision. As some of you know, I've spent a good deal of my academic life picking apart dialogue and descriptions in literary texts. And when someone says, I respectfully ask, and then says, because in my opinion it's the right thing to do, what they are really doing is giving an order. There are several other ways of expressing yourself in such a matter without airily telling the High Court of another country what to do. Okay, you may disagree with me on that reading, but I do think that it's beyond dispute that his principles about how British and American governments should treat journalists, as against his principles about how Chinese and Russian governments treat their journalists, the two different positions he has might betray a certain lack of consistency. So while I put up some photos of dead and missing journalists and opponents who got on the wrong side of Vladimir Putin, and while you're looking at them, I would remind you that it's because of those dead journalists that Russia is in the mess it's in. And it's because we can fight to free Assange that the West is not quite yet, in the same position. And on that, I hope we can all agree. I just wonder if Professor Mearsheimer can bring himself to admit it. Okay,
to
till
jail
next time.
because, again, journalists don't go to jail for publishing classified information in the United States. It is very important to remember that in the case of Julian Assange, he is not the equivalent of Ellsberg because he was not an insider who leaked the information. Chelsea Manning was the insider. Assange was the equivalent of the New York Times, and thus he should not be extradited so he can be put on trial in the United States. Unsurprisingly, government leaders do not like leaks unless they do the leaking, which they frequently do. Thus, they are powerfully inclined to punish those who do leak, and they even try on occasion to punish the journalists who publish the leaked material, as is the case with Assange. It is fair game for governments to go after leakers, but it is not acceptable for governments to go after journalists. Indeed, it would directly undermine freedom of the press, which is essential for monitoring governments and holding them accountable when they pursue misguided policies. In fact, one of the main reasons that the US government is so determined to put Assange behind bars is that he has exposed malfeasance by US policymakers. In my opinion, that is all for the good and essential for making a liberal democracy like the United States work as efficiently and wisely as possible. Two final points. First, it is important to emphasize that nobody was hurt because of the documents that Assange published. Nobody's life was put in danger because of what he posted on WikiLeaks, and certainly nobody was killed. For sure, the misguided actions of many US policymakers were exposed because of what Assange did, but that, in my opinion, is all for the good. Second, Assange has already paid a huge price for his actions. He has effectively been in prison for years. Sending him to the United States, where he is likely to be convicted and sentenced to a long jail term, would be a case of cruel and unusual punishment. For all these reasons, I respectfully ask the British High Court not to extradite Assange to the United States. In my opinion, that would clearly be the right decision. Thank you.
Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share, share, share.